Hello and welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to have another session about the Jain philosophy. So we're going to read about the dharma, adharma, kasha, liberation and bondage, and what according to Jain is the ultimate aim of our lives. So what is dharma and adharma? Dharma is the principle of motion and serves as the medium of motion but not cause. Just as water is necessary condition as a medium for movement of fish but doesn't initiate motion. Similarly, the movement of soul or material requires an auxiliary condition. So, what they try to mean by this statement is that dharma is just an auxiliary condition for existence. Like dharma is like a medium for the state of motion, and it is because of the dharma things are in motion and things are being formed over in this world. Adharma is the principle of rest without which objects are always moving. Both dharma and adharma pervade the entire world space, loka, akash, and are eternal, formless, and non moving. So, dharma is attributed to the principle of motion, whereas adharma is attributed to the principle of rest. So, in the principle of rest, the objects are like adharma is the principle of rest without which the objects are always moving. So without the adharma, objects will be always moving. Both adharma and dharma are in this entire loka akash or the world space, and these are eternal, formless and non-moving. Coming to akash, space is the eternal, all-pervading, formless and imperceptible substance which accommodates all living beings. Space is known through inference. You cannot have a full perception of space, so it is just known through the inference praman. Space is the locus for extended substances to animate themselves. So this is where the extended substances actually animate themselves. So earlier we have read the categorization of the dravya, in which we have the astikaya and the anastikaya. Within the astikaya we have jiva and ajiva. So we've already read about the jiva, which were the pure consciousness, and here we would read about ajiva. In ajiva it was dharma and adharma, akasha and pudgal. So we have read about pudgal earlier, which was like a material thing, and it had the least consciousness. It was devoid of any consciousness. It could be attributed to the material objects which we see, and which like the material objects near us. So moving on to dharma is for attributed for motion, adharma for rest, the principle for rest, and akasha is for the space around us. It is the akasha where the extended objects animate themselves. Then within the categorization of astikaya and anastikaya, in the anastikaya we had only one category, which was kal. The only astikaya dravya, as it doesn't exist in space. Kal is divisible, infinite, inferred and not perceived. So you cannot perceive time. It is said to be divisible, infinite, and it can only be inferred. It is because through the knowledge of inference that you know that there is a time which exists. It is distinguished into real time and empirical time. So the real time is called the paramarthik kala, and empirical time is called the vyavaharik kala. So kala has been further divided into two. One is paramarthik and the other is vyavaharik. Continuity or duration vartan is the mark of real time, while the latter is limited by a beginning and an end. So paramarthik, which is the real time, is continuous and is not bound by any duration, whereas vyavaharik, which is the empirical time, has a beginning and an end. Moreover, real time is formless and eternal, and by imposing conventional limitations and distinctions on it, empirical time is produced. So the vyavaharik or the empirical time is a product of the real time. And because of imposing certain conventional limitations and distinctions, you can have the Vyavaharik or empirical time, which is divisible. Empirical time is a product of the real time. So, moving on to the concept of bondage and liberation. This is a very intriguing concept from the Jaina philosophy, and everybody must have a thorough understanding of it. Like, this is something which will totally blow off your minds, and it would make you ponder much upon what exactly is the aim of life and why are we the way we are. So, moving on, bondage and liberation. The ultimate aim of Jaina philosophy is the liberation of Jiva from the bondage. Jiva is a pure consciousness which is coextensive with the body. So the soul is actually coextensive with the body, and it is bonded, and we have to actually liberate it from that bondage. That is the ultimate aim of the Jaina philosophy. Liberation is the complete cessation of suffering and the stoppage of the cycle of birth and death. So, what exactly is liberation according to the Jainas? So, according to them, liberation is actually a total cessation of suffering. Like, there is no suffering now. You are far away from the cycle of suffering, and there is a complete stoppage of the cycle of karma. Of the cycle of birth and death. So, since there is no suffering and there is no cycle of birth and death, you are liberated. Jaina says that bondage occurs due to the association of Jeev, whose root cause is one's ignorance. So, the cause of our bondage, or the cause of the Jeev is getting bonded, is because of ignorance. So, this is a pictorial representation of how I perceive this very concept of it. So, initially, what we have read earlier is that Jiva, or the pure soul, has infinite knowledge, infinite faith, bliss, and power. So, in due course of time, or in due course of life, there is an accumulation of karma particles. So these karma particles are very sticky ones. They actually stick to your pure soul, and they kind of form a thin lining or a cloud over it. So now your soul is, now the pure soul or the jiva is completely bounded on all sides by these karma particles which are accumulated by it. So due to the influx of these karma particles, we call it as ashraf. The influx of karma particles is called as ashraf, which eventually leads to the bondage of the souls. So Jainism considers actually two types of bondages. The first is internal or ideal bondage, and the second is its effect. So the second type of bondage is actually a consequence of the first type, which is the internal or ideal bondage. So the internal or ideal bondage is the soul's bondage to bad disposition, bhavabandh. Its effect, material bondage, that is soul's actual association with matter, dravyabandh. So we have two kinds of bondages. The first one is bhavabandh and the second is dravyabandh. The dravyabandh is actually an effect of the bhavabandh. The material bondage is actually an effect of the soul's bondage to bad disposition. So moving on, the passions causing bondage are kashyas. So the kashyas are the ones which are the passions which cause bondage. Kashyas can be attributed to the thoughts and desires which are sticky in nature. Krodh, anger, man, pride, maya, infatuation, and lobh. So these are the certain kashyas which are actually very sticky in nature, and these are the sole reason for the bondage of the jiva. The Jainas speak of many karmas and name each after the effect it produces. For example, Gotra karma, which determines family of birth, Ayu karma determining age, Gyan Varniya karma that clouds knowledge, Darshan Varniya karma which clouds faith, Mohaniya dissolution, Vedaniya pleasure and pain, etc. The influx of the karma karmic matter towards the jeev is called ashrav, and the subsequent intermingling bandha or bondage. So the influx of these karma particles, which have been categorized by the Jainas into many different karmas and the effect they produce, So therefore the influx is called the ashrav, and subsequent intermingling of these different karma particles is called the bondage. So first is the influx of these karma particles to the pure soul, which is called the ashrav, and then the intermingling of these is called the bandha. Jiva is naturally associated with infinite knowledge, infinite bliss, infinite power, and infinite faith. These natural qualities get enveloped just like the sun is covered by clouds. Liberation occurs when Jiva gets completely separated from Pudgals in the following two steps. So, first of all, we have read about that the Jiva is actually the pure consciousness which gets engulfed in the clouds of the karmic matter, the karma particle, and because of the influx is called the ashrav. The influx of these karma particles is called the ashrav, and the subsequent intermingling is called the bondage. So the kasyas are actually the thoughts and desires which actually are sticky, and these sticky substances to the jeev cause in the bondage of it. These kasyas, the thoughts and desires, actually attract karma budgals. So if there is bondage, there might be a way to get liberated as well, because we have read earlier that liberation is the complete cessation of suffering and the stoppage of the cycle of birth and death. So what according to Jainas is actually liberation? So liberation actually occurs when Jiva gets completely separated from Pudgals. Like there is a complete cessation of the whole lining of karmic Pudgal matter, and this happens in two steps. First is the stoppage of ashrava, or which is called samvara. So this is the stopping of the inflow of the karma particle. This is possible if kasyas are removed by following the 3 joule path and taking panch mahavatra. So the first step for liberation is the stoppage of ashrav, the stoppage of the influx of the karmic particles, and this could happen if one is separated from the kasyas, and for this one has to follow the 3 joule path given by the Jain philosophy and also follow the panch mahavrat. The second step towards liberation is the shedding of the accumulated karmic particle from the soul, nirjara. So the first was samvara, which was the cessation of ashrav, the stoppage of ashrav, and the second is nirjara, which is the shedding of accumulated karmic matter from soul. So there are two basic steps for liberation stated by the Jain philosophy. First is samvara and the second is nirjara. Samvara is the stoppage of the ashrav, like the stoppage of the karmic particles, the stoppage of the kasyas, and the second is the shedding of the accumulated karmic particles from soul. Liberation is attained when one follows the 3 joule path or the 3 ratna prescribed in the Jain ethics. So these three paths which are prescribed by the Jain ethics are Samyak Darshan, which is right faith, attitude of respect towards truth, Shraddha, Samyak Gyan, right knowledge, leads to Keval Gyan. So the Samyak Gyan is the one where it actually leads to Keval Gyan. Samyak Charitra, right conduct, describes the 5 great vows or the 5 the 5 ratnas, which are called as the Panch Ratnas. So you could remember it as the 3 joule path as KFC. Samyak knowledge, Samyak faith, Samyak conduct. Moving on to Panch Mahavrat, 5 great vows. So the 5 great vows given by the Jain philosophy are Ahimsa, Satyam, Asatyam, Brahmacharyam, and Aparigraha. Ahimsa is the abstinence from all injury to life. Like you should not cause any injury to any form of life. Like we have read earlier that there is some sort of consciousness in every single thing in this world, and although the consciousness raises it depends, the degree of the consciousness depends from an object to object, but there is some amount of consciousness, and you should not harm anybody, be it any form of life. So ahimsa is actually the abstinence from all injury to life. Satyam, which is the abstinence from falsehood. like you should be truthful, you should follow the path for truthfulness. So abstain from being falseful, abstain from all the lies. Asatyam, abstinence from stealing, no stealing. Brahmacharyam, abstinence from self indulgence. This was added by Mahavira. And the last was aparigraha, abstinence from all attachments. So what Jain philosophy or what any other school of philosophy would tell you is that it is because of attachment, and which would eventually lead to ignorance, is the sole reason for your bondage and the sole reason for your sufferings. And in order to get off from all of these chains of bondages, you have to first let go of all the attachments of this worldly nature, whichever you have accumulated within your time in the world. And after you forego this attachment, then you would have the right knowledge, and this would eventually lead to you to a liberated path, whereby you would get accustomed, or you would get back to your previous form, whereby it is the pure soul, and you then have the infinite knowledge, infinite faith, infinite power, and infinite bliss or happiness. So these are the Panch Maharatnas. We would like to revise it again. The first one is the Ahimsa, the second is Asatyam, the third is Asatyayam, the fourth is Brahmacharya, and the last one is Aparigraha. Ahimsa, Satyam, Asatyayam, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha. Besides Panch Mahavrat, Jainism also requires quite extreme carefulness in daily activities called samiti, and restraint of thought and speech called gupti. So beside the path of the Panch Mahavrats, Jainism also professes that we have to follow extreme or required carefulness in our daily activities, which is called the samiti, and also to restrain our thoughts and speech, which is called gupti. Being free from the obstacles of matter, the soul realizes its inherent potential and attains the fold perfection. The fold perfection is the Ananta Chatushtaya, whereby the soul has infinite power, infinite knowledge, infinite bliss or happiness, and Ananta Darshan, which is infinite faith. So the liberation is also of two types. The first is Sayog and the second is Ayog. Sayog is because of the cessation of the Ghatiya Karma, and Ayog is because of the cessation of the Aghatiya Karma. So next is Jaina's rejection of God. God is perceived but sought to be proved by inference. So it is because of the inference praman that we get to know about God. So this is one of the arguments given by Jainas, that God is not somebody who we could perceive, and it is because of our inference, it is because of our reasoning that we infer that there is some God. According to the Nyaya view, every product is the work of an agent. So every karma has a karta. So every product is a work of an agent or karta. Hence, this world is a work of a supreme agent, which is God. So according to the Nyaya, this world is a work of a supreme agent, which is the God. Jaina's reply to this was that the Nyayic view is based on the doubtful premise that the world is a product. Products are worked on by agents with their limbs. For example, a potter makes a pot, but God, being formless, cannot be an agent. So Jainas refuted Nyayic view for claiming that God is the Karta and he is the one who is the supreme agent for the work of this world. They say that this premise is doubtful because claiming world is a product is itself a very doubting statement, because products are worked on by agents with their limbs. For example, a pot is a work, and it has been worked upon. It has been worked upon by a potter. A potter needs to make that pot. But God is a formless one. God, being formless, cannot be an agent. Jainas also reject the qualities of perfection, such as omniscience, omnipotence, etc. If God were omnipotent, he would be the cause of all things. But practical things such as houses and pots are not caused by God. So what Jainas try to claim by this statement is that if God was the cause of everything, like if God was omnipotent, then how is he not the cause for all the practical things like the horse, like the houses and the pots? These are actually not built by God himself. So he could not be termed as omnipotent by the Jainas. Monotheists hold that God should be one, since if there are more than one God, harmony would not be established. However, according to Jainas, even ants and bees can work in harmony. So these are the four major statements given by the Jainas for their claim of for not accepting God. These were the statements given by Jainas for their rejection of God. While Jainas reject the existence of God as a supreme being, they accept the worship of liberated, perfect souls called Siddhas, who are of five kinds, Panch Parameshti. So, with this, we have come to an end of this great philosophy given by the Jainas. I'll see you guys in the next video where we discuss more about the different philosophical systems in India. And till then, see you guys.